When a child is critically ill, who gets to make the final call? It's one of the most heart-wrenching questions in all of medical ethics, especially when the people who love that child the most just can't agree. Today, we're going to explore this exact dilemma through a hypothetical case that really gets to the core of this issue.
So, to really wrap our heads around this idea of a minor's proxy, let's walk through a hypothetical scenario together. Picture this. A 1-year-old girl is admitted to the hospital. Her situation is really severe, incredibly complex, and every single decision from here on out carries enormous weight.
Looking at this timeline, what's so striking is just how fast everything escalates. So this child was born with a congenital heart defect. But just 3 weeks ago, things took a really sharp turn for the worse. We're talking a dramatic 30% weight loss. By her 6th day in the hospital, she was in respiratory distress and had to be intubated. The stakes are just incredibly high. Okay, so just one day after that breathing tube is removed, the family hits a major crossroads. The doctor tells the parents that, look, while the situation is dire, there is still a chance, a possibility of recovery. And it's that sliver of hope that leads directly to a really painful conflict. And here it is, the deadlock. On one side, you have the mother. She wants to apply every single possible procedure to save her baby. But on the other side, you have the father. He's seen his child suffering, and he stands firm. No more intubation if her condition gets worse again. You have two parents with the same deep love for their child, arriving at completely opposite conclusions. So this brings us right to the heart of the matter. In a situation like this, what do you do? Whose decision should be followed? Who gets to be the voice, the legal proxy, for a child who can't speak for herself? To answer that, we really need to look at the hierarchy of decision-making. So let's break down the established legal and ethical pathways that are in place for figuring out a minor's proxy.
All right, so the starting point, the foundational principle is simple, and it's pretty much what you'd expect. The law recognizes that the right and the responsibility to make legal decisions for a child automatically belongs to their parents. They are the default proxies. But what happens when those default proxies disagree? Well, this is where it gets complicated. Different cultures, different legal systems, they all have different answers. Some traditions might default to the father's decision or the mother's, but in many modern legal systems, both parents have equal say. And when you have two equal powers at a standstill, a third party has to step in to break the tie. And that third party is usually the court, acting under a very old legal doctrine called parens patria. It's a Latin term, and it literally means parent of the nation. This principle gives the court the ultimate authority to step in and act as a guardian for people who can't care for themselves, like our hypothetical 1-year-old girl. And this really shows you just how much power the court has in these cases. Under parens patriae, a judge can actually overrule one parent or even both of them. The court's only guiding principle, its only North Star, is figuring out what is truly in the child's best interest. The doctor and hospital would then be legally required to follow that court order. But, nobody wants this to end up in a courtroom. Taking a family to court is a painful, adversarial process. So what's the alternative? Well, this leads us to the doctor's absolutely critical role and why clear, compassionate communication is always, always the preferred path. This quote from the source material says it all, really. Involving the courts is not the goal. It is the absolute last resort, only when every other possible avenue has failed. The real important work happens way before anyone even thinks about a courtroom. So what does that better path actually look like? Well, it's a process that's built on trust and communication. The doctor keeps the lines of communication constantly open. They explain every single stage of the illness and the treatment plan. This helps the parents feel updated and, more importantly, confident in the care their child is receiving. And with that foundation of trust, they can be guided to see the situation a bit more objectively, and very often that leads them to a unified decision on their own. And doctors aren't just relying on their empathy here. They actually have tools, established frameworks to help have these impossible conversations. By using bioethical principles, they can explain incredibly difficult concepts, like the ethics of withholding or withdrawing life support, in a way that helps parents navigate these devastating choices. So all of this, the communication, the ethics, even the courts, it's all pointing toward one ultimate goal. Let's talk about what this entire process is truly trying to achieve for the family. This is so important. The goal isn't to push parents toward one specific choice over another. The goal is to create the right conditions for what's called a truly free and informed consent. And that means they understand all the medical facts, all the options, and all the potential outcomes. It allows them to make a decision that is genuinely their own. So if there's one thing to take away from all this, it's this. What matters most isn't the final decision itself. It's the quality of the process that leads to it. Was it supportive? Was it communicative? Did it honor the parents' love and their deep concern while always keeping the child's best interest at the center? That's the real measure of success. And that leaves us with a final and pretty profound question to think about. In the face of overwhelming medical uncertainty, how do we, as a society, best honor a child's interests when the people who love them more than anyone in the world simply cannot agree on the path forward?